Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 474th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we have a man after my own heart. His name is Doug C. Brown. He wrote a book called Win-Win Selling. And we get into how he left a multi-six-figure job, sales job, because he was dying a little bit each day, as he said. He had a wife who stayed home. He had two kids in diapers, and it was quite similar to what I did a couple of times. When I left the Air Force, I had a young son. He was born in April. I left in September of 97. We had another son on the way we didn't know about. Jumped into commission sales. I left. It wasn't a multi-six-figure job, but it was a good career path. I was an Air Force Academy grad. Probably had a guaranteed 20 years easy if I wanted to. We were living in a 3-bedroom home on the back bay of Biloxi. Had a view. We were right on the 10th tee box, so I just started golfing a few years before that. And I remember we'd make the turn. I'd call my wife, and she would just hand over food and beers and everything, and had it easy. Everything's paid for. The house is paid for, utilities, electricity. Had to mow the yard. We had every other Friday off. I was the fourth house from the clubhouse, so I easily walked to the golf course. And we left it behind. And then later on, as I was in sales, I walked away from a high, I think I was making about 180 grand a year in 2006, 7, somewhere in there. I walked away from that to do my own thing. So I can relate. We get into, some Chet Holmes. We get into your belief system. A lot of things. All right. I don't want to steal the thunder. But if you are looking to regain that thunder, when I joined it was a 12-week teleclass, started in early 06, it changed my life. And I'm still friends to this day. Actually, I flew to Alabama to help my dad in early November. He got a little hurricane damage, and we drove over to Pensacola to have lunch with Steve Clark. He was my sales coach. I've had him on the Sales Podcast. So here we are, 14 years later. I'm still in touch with him, and he had that kind of impact on me. So if you're looking for someone to help you streamline your sales, your verbiage, your methodology, overcome objections, we've got two options. The MakeEverySale.com is the on-demand content, and the Implementors.com is the ongoing training. And you get the on-demand stuff in the Implementors, but the bonus of the Implementors is that you get live calls, every week, and you can ask questions at any time. So avail yourself of that, right? It's the end of the year, whether you're listening to this at the end of 2020, early 2021. So end the year right, start the year right, and I will help you grow your sales. I guarantee it. All right. Now let's bring on our guest. Douglas C. Brown. As long as we call you late for dinner, we can call you whatever we want, right?
That's absolutely true.
As
long as you feed me.
Doug C. Brown, all the way from New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great, Wes, and thank you for having me on.
So you're out with a new book. We were talking just before I hit record. We've overlapped a good bit, sharing some of our sales woes, our sales successes. Like I said, overlap a little bit. You've had some great experiences working with the Chet Holmes Company, with Tony Robbins, doing a little training back in the day, the old ClickFunnels founder. So what the heck, man? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? I love the part you were just telling me. You were 60 grand in debt, didn't want to go back to working for the man, went 4 grand more in debt to work to get a little coaching from Chet Holmes, right? And that was,
right.
Did you say that was the beginning of your turnaround? Was that bouncing off of rock bottom?
Pretty much. I mean, I had two kids, they both were in diapers. Wife, she wasn't working because she was taking care of the children. And I had a six-figure sales job that I had prior to. And I left that because, every day I was going in there and dying a little bit inside. So I did not want to go back. It just, it was a good gig, but I outgrew the corporate, type of lifestyle at that point. And I knew, but the challenge was, I decided I was going to start this company and I had business partners and I put up all the funding, right? 60,000. And 4 months later, I was the only partner in the company and the company was making $1,500 a month. Right. So when that training came around, as you and I were discussing, I had to make a decision. And the decision was, am I going back to paid prison? Because I was, they were calling me actually that week, they were calling me back. And, I was on track to make a multi-six-figure income with that company, which is great, back then. And I had to make that decision.
And when was this? Early 2000s?
Oh, let's see. My daughter now is 21. So she was just turning 2. So 19 years ago.
So 2001.
Yeah.
So all right, we're gonna go all over loop-de-loop here. Because you sound kind of like me. How do you have two partners that don't pay any money and then within 4 months they walk away? What the heck were you thinking, man?
I was thinking I wanted to be free and that everybody thought the same way I did. And it was actually 3 partners, believe it or not.
3 other partners?
Yeah, I had 3 partners. One I can understand. He ran into a gal of his dreams and kind of took off.
Oh, wow.
But he was a former attorney for MCI at that time, the telecom company. And the other one decided that he liked working on his home more so. And the other one decided to go into internet marketing.
What were they going to do? I mean, what did you create a sales training company? Like what was the company?
Well, it was called Telecom Auditing Group. I still own the company today. It was an auditing and consulting company in the telecommunications sector.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So, and that you were in that space already?
I was selling telecommunications for a company. And I had been in that space for probably 7 years prior to.
Nice. I was selling test equipment. So MCI, WorldCom, Enron, Sprint, Ameritech. I'd fly up to Chicago and that whole area, Southwestern Bell down in Austin. Those were all my clients. And I worked with a couple of tech firms in the test and measurement space. So I know that space. And I got hired right at the peak. I just didn't know it was the peak. And it was 4 years of just hanging on. It was terrible. But oh well. So you launched this. They split. And what did you do? How did you find Chet Holmes at that point?
So I had done a little bit of work for guerrilla marketing for a guy named Jay Levinson.
Sure.
And Jay, his nephew, and I were doing a lot of work together. And Jay said to me, Doug, you're a smart guy. I think you need a little business guidance. So go on to this training with Chet Holmes. So I did. Now, Jay was probably getting an affiliate fee at the time.
Sure.
Right. But I did. I listened to the training and I said, geez, this looks like it would really work. So I decided to invest. But it was a hard decision because it was $4,000 pay in full. And, here I am, $60,000 in debt. And back in 2001, for me, that was a fair amount of money. And so I sat there and I said, well, I've done dumber things than this, obviously. So I put the card down. I said, run it in full. And then I had to go up and tell my wife.
I've had some of those conversations. Like, trust me, honey, it's going to work out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she was really good about it. I mean, it was interesting because I walked up there. She had one child on her hip. She was making some food, and one child in the high chair. And I said, "Hey, I just did this," and she said, "Okay." And I said, "That's it?" And she said, "Yeah, that's it." And I turned around and I said, "Okay, well, I got off easy there." So, and then I stopped because I'm like, "This is going to come back, right?" So I turned around twice more and asked her the same question. Are you sure? And she looked at me and said this to me, Doug, I'm fine. I believe in you. The question is, do you believe in you? And that was one of the smartest questions ever asked to me, because I had to go figure that out. And that's what turned things around for me, was making that decision that, yep, I'm worth it. Let me do this. And so I really applied everything I learned with Chet Holmes International. And, I brought my business to just $998,000 in 15 months.
Man, you just didn't have the discipline to get to $1 million. Huh? I guess we're going to have to turn off this interview, man.
I cannot tell you how upset I was when I ran the numbers and it was $2,000 off. It was the day before the books were closing. I'm trying to get a new client just so I could put it over the top. But
Mom, Dad, buy some coaching from me. You can give it away. I promise. I'll get you back. Oh man. So $998,000 in 15 months.
Yeah.
And was it in the telecom space, or did you quote pivot? Right, that seems a big.
No, I didn't pivot. It was all in the telecommunications space. And then what happened was there was a company called Coach University, and I was doing their telecommunications to them, with them. And they asked me to be a coach. And I looked at their company. I'm like, I don't know, So I went back to the Chet Holmes organization and I said, I've been kind of looking at coaching. I think I'd be a good business coach for you. Why don't you give me an opportunity? And they did. And then, within the first 6 months, I was their number one grossing coach. And, I was doing $65,000 a month in coaching with their organization, plus running my business. So, that caught their attention. And from there, it just kind of stair-stepped its way. In the next couple of years, I ended up becoming the president of sales and training for the whole company. And we grew that company up to about 27 million. And, Tony Robbins decided, hey, this looks attractive. So he wanted in. So he came in. So I became president of training and sales for Tony, as well as Chet. It all worked out from there, because I went in and optimized their businesses while I was there. Right. And that's how we, in part, got to 27 million. So people started taking a notice of who I was at that point within the training industry. So one person hired me, then another person, and so on and so on.
So did you just shut down the telecom, or was it running on its own by then and you could do both?
One of the things I learned at Chet's was what we called the 3 Ps. Right? So, policies, procedures, et cetera. And so I put a system around the telecommunications business, and then I was selling 3 to 5 year residual contracts. So what ended up happening was I had a multi-6 figure residual income coming in from that. And I was able to walk away from it. And, that was 19 years ago. So I'm still getting paid on that today. Not like I was, but I haven't worked the company in that regard in over 10 years. Right.
So for those listening, let's say, so you got 2 things going on. So let's go back to the first one, right? What changed? What did you learn that was so instrumental to make that 998,000 in 15 months? That's a big switch, going from 60 grand in the hole to, what's that? 80. I can't do the math. How much were you doing here? 998,000 divided by 15. So that's 66,000. So you went from what you were in the hole to actually doing every month for 15 months straight. That's a big turnaround.
Thank you. Well, what was the reason? Back to, is that?
Yeah, was did Chet hypnotize you? There's a secret. There's a hack. I just need one more funnel, right? I just need, it was podcasting. No, podcasting. You were doing fax broadcast. Was that the secret? No, faxes are gone. Voicemail. You were doing voice broadcasting, right? Instagram? No, Snapchat. It was Snapchat. Damn it. Okay, what was the secret?
Well, I would say there's probably 3 things. Number one, I had to make a decision that I was worth it. I had to say, you know what? Because I could have gone back to a multi-six-figure income in corporate America, but I just, just doing that just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Okay, what is it? You were worth it. What is it? You were worth $1 million. You were worth not being in debt. You were worth not being jerked around and lied to by partners. What were you worth?
The it is, I always wanted to be free and autonomous, right? I wanted to have time freedom. I wanted to have the ability, if I wanted to go buy something for my wife or my kids, or, set my kids up for college or whatever. I just wanted that freedom, right? And that was a big motivator for me. And frankly, I wanted to give my kids a better life than I had. Not that I had a terrible life growing up, but I just wanted to be able to give them things that just weren't even in our thought processes, with trips, and going to different places. And, instead of going, reading about the Eiffel Tower, in a book, I wanted them to be able to go, touch it. Right. So
don't touch it, man. You get COVID. You get COVID if you touch the Eiffel Tower. Come on, man.
Now it's possible, I guess. But it was a bigger motivator than myself, right? I had to have a mission that was bigger than me, and my family was that. And then from there it was just, Chet used to always talk about this thing called pig-headed discipline and determination.
Yep.
And
I use that in my bio, pig-headed.
Yeah. Yes. I noticed that.
I got it from him. I'm like, all right, that's not trademarked. I'm going to use that one because I am pig-headed, but.
Well, and Chet really he was determined no matter what, Chet was going to make it happen. Right. So I started adapting that. And then, he had something he called the best buyer strategy, where you go after your best buyers. And I would say the combination of those three and going after higher level accounts, which was crazy because I was a major account executive in the telecommunications space. So I was used to selling to big companies, but when I was in my own company, I wanted to, have and do a great job for every single company, and dealing with the big companies. They're so spread out that sometimes it's hard to get the information transfer to happen, within months. So I decided I'm going to go after kind of a niche space in the best buyer strategy. And that's what I did. And that's what started turning it around. And I looked at my model, because a lot of times people are held at bay because of their business model. So I looked at the model and I changed the model around, and that's what got me free. Because the first time I got a $4,400 recurring revenue check locked in for 3 years, it really kicked in my mind. I was like, okay, wait a minute, this is over $50,000 a year. Right. To be able to have that. So that's what I kept pursuing. And then I think the last thing was I was always being the dumbest guy in the room, if you will. I always asked questions, the questions that people would not dare to ask. I would call people up who were successful and just say, hey, you know what, I'm doing this. I respect where you are. Would you answer a few questions for me? And so I was just a constant learner, asking questions that I think most people would have been afraid to ask.
Nice. So what were you selling back then, like with the telecom company? Was it consulting, or was it some type of service?
So what we used to do is we used to go in and we'd review telecommunications phone bills. And, by design, most telephone bills had errors in them. They just had billing errors. They were riddled with them, tax errors, all kinds of things. So I would find sometimes some significant amounts of money, and then I would do a revenue split with them. Yeah. So, that was one model. Or I would do an upfront fee and a partial revenue split. Or sometimes it was just a strange. They would pay a higher up fee just to have it audited. And then what I learned from that was, okay, I'm doing great, but I can build an agency on the back of this. And that's what I did. I built a telecommunications agency. And so I had recurring revenue coming in on the front end and on the back end at that point, and some one time.
Right. Yeah. So that's nice, having something that's passive like that. Because I've had some clients, one of my first sales training clients, that's what he did and still does. He did it on the merchant processing fees.
Yes.
So yeah, that's cool. And then like, would you have to like periodically like do a little spot check for them, or was it pretty?
Yeah, I would do a 6 month and a 12-month review to make sure that everything was on track. And depending on what they, wanted to make an arrangement with me, I'd do a second year or third year.
Yeah.
I was always trying to stay in the space, and
Yeah.
anybody in sales who kind of gets it knows that it's not just the first sale that counts, right? If you can have repeat sales, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Cool. So, you go work with Chet, you work with Tony. When did you go out totally on your own?
I was with those guys for 7 years. Unfortunately, Chet succumbed to leukemia.
Yeah.
And right around that time, Tony decided, he didn't want to stay in that particular partnership after Chet was gone. So, Chet Holmes International is still alive, the company, but many of us, I should say, moved on to our own things at that point. So I started consulting at that point, consulting on revenue growth. And then I started working with some other folks in the training industry. The next one was a guy named Russ Whitney, and Russ owned a majority share in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and a bunch of other brands. He had a $250 million training company plus a $750 million construction company. So that man is a genius. I learned a tremendous amount from him, but, we built a company, with him and for him. And then, just kind of people in the training industry find me for the most part, or, I'm networking and then people find me through that. But I really went more toward the B2B, which is what I'm most comfortable with, helping companies raise their revenues and helping them get unstuck and figuring out why they're stuck. It's kind of an obsession of mine, right? It's kind of like scoping in and figuring out what's wrong and how do they turn it around.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's, training their sales team too.
So what are you helping people do now? Right. We got a crazy election. We've got COVID, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like what has stayed the same? Right? I don't really care what's changed. I think change is going to keep happening at an accelerating rate, and to one degree, but I think humans, like, we never change, right? Like what are you telling people to keep doing, as 2021 comes along?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that a lot of people, because of the COVID thing, have kind of tried to pull back, right? They're sort of burying their head in the sand and trying to figure out, okay, when this clears, then what? Right. And I've been teaching and telling people now's the time to put the pedal down, because your competitor is putting their head in the sand, waiting for this tide to go out and in. Right. So it's, the thing to keep doing the same is connecting and communicating with people, because no matter whether we're doing it virtually, or we're doing it face to face, whatever, we human beings have not changed on that particular issue. We absolutely want connection one way or another. So, and that's what social media is all about in a lot of ways, there's electronic, connection. So, just keep communicating and prospect more than you ever have in the past, because the reality is if you work yourself through this time, just like any other, issue we've had, I'm not saying that COVID-19's better or worse than, say, AIDS or SARS or MERS or 9/11 or anything that's happened in the past. But, this too shall resolve itself in some capacity. So if you work really hard through this time, when people come back, when the things get a little easier, what will happen is you're going to be top of mind. As you're top of mind, you're going to see probably some scaling and rapid growth at that point.
Yeah. How are you recommending people prospect? Is it back to old cold calling, picking up the phone? If you mail it to their office, they may all be remote. Will they even get your mail, right? So Or is it fax? Are fax broadcasts coming back? Or I still have an MCI WorldCom. I think I have some credit on that card. I use that card still.
You can still use it. And if they have a fax machine, believe me, it'll get noticed because they're probably getting most companies one fax a year. Yeah, I mean, it's really a combination of all above. I mean, the thing is a lot of people are trying online, and because it kind of shelters them a little bit from what I would call it rejection reality, right? So, but if you do online appropriately, you'll minimize that as well. I like still offline. Now, I use LinkedIn, I use Facebook, I use Twitter, but I really like offline. And the reason I like offline is because, well, you mentioned direct mail. So if we do a lumpy mail campaign, right? I mean, people are not really used to getting that right now. They're not used to getting creative, fun ideas in the mail to make them laugh, right? And lighten their day. So, I'll do direct mail. I'll even do a handwritten letter or note or a postcard, right, out. And then here's the key. If you're going to use that, your audience, you've got to follow up with a phone call at that point. You got to follow up with an email at that point. So don't rely on just one modality today. You want to rely on multimodality, all working in harmony to get someone's attention, because you got to reach out and get that attention. If you don't get that attention, you're not going to get the interest.
Right. Man. Well, that's cool. I just had Nick Runyon on. His episode will go live just before yours, but he's up in Montana. Mm-hmm. And they do direct mail. They do lumpy mail. So it's interesting, have back-to-back interviews, and this comes up. And I've been telling people, it's like, what's old is new, right? People are actually easier to reach. They're more likely to have a conversation right now, at least at any time in the past 5 or 10 years. They're because nobody's doing it. And people are so much more isolated now, since COVID. They're more willing to have a conversation. So try it.
Yeah. And they're looking for help, depending on what most people do. I mean, anything that's going to help them either reduce their expenses, increase their revenues, in the business world, make life easier operationally, more efficient, more effective. They're looking for help.
Yeah. So help them.
Absolutely.
So now how are you structured? Did you kind of replicate what you were doing with Chet, like a team of coaches and kind of following that model? Or is it more you or?
Well, I started actually building commission sales teams for other companies, and I was running those. So that is a model that I actually did creatively borrow from what we did with Chet, right, and even improve upon that. So I would hire and almost become their sales. Well, I would become their sales team in a lot of ways. But then I do the one-on-one, consulting and coaching. I primarily work one-on-one with companies that are doing about 8 million and up, have 5 salespeople and up. And then I have a training company as well, that for anybody who wants to, raise their revenues, improve their efficiencies, sell better, prospect better. I run a pretty consistent training programs on how to do those. So yes, I borrowed some things from what I learned at Chet, from what I learned at Tony, where I learned at Russ. I mean, from a little bit of everybody, honestly, and frankly, a lot of the clients.
Yeah. So is it, are people letting you come in? Are they doing it in person yet? Or is it still mostly remote?
It's mostly remote, but my business primarily has been mostly remote. So, even large corporations like, Intuit or Procter & Gamble, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, I never had to go to the corporate office. We closed the deal over, like we're doing here, over either video or over phone.
Right.
And, what I found is some people still like people to come in, but most people, they really don't want to set up for you to come into their location. They're busy too. So However, if they want me to come in, I would come in depending on what the arrangement was.
Right.
But most people don't. That's what I have found.
Yep. So you just, do you make your dream 100 and just go after them?
Yeah, that's exactly. It's interesting you brought that up, the Dream 100, because I actually started a whole new Dream 100 list yesterday.
Nice.
So, yeah, it depends on what somebody's outcome is, right? If somebody is, let's say they want to be a consultant and they want to make $1 million a year, you got to go after certain size companies because you can only work with so many companies at one time to be fair to everybody.
Right.
So it really depends on your dream list. Will depend on what the outcome is going to be. For some people, the dream list is, the Fortune 100, right? For other people, it's, I want to get to certain types of celebrities. For other people, it's like, look, I want somebody that's just going to pay me, $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And I want 10 of them because I want to do, right, 350, 400 grand a year, mm-hmm, whatever it might be. But it's a lot easier to focus down on, 100 entities or 100 people and go after them than trying to go after thousands and spreading people out.
Yeah. This may sound like a funny question, but do you ever feel bad? Like some of my best clients, and not just best for me, like they're those that are happiest with me, like I don't do a lot for. Mm-hmm. Like they'll hire me at good money, and I'm like, hey, dude, like, shouldn't we have another call? No, we're good. I'll reach out in a couple of weeks. I'm like, okay, like I'm here if you need me. It's like, because on the one hand, I don't want to be forgotten, right? But on the other hand, it's like I gave them some nuggets. They're off running, making it happen. I mean, is that weird or is that kind of normal?
No, I found it to be normal. It's, because here's the thing, you can come in with one idea, which is such a high, tremendous value, and they implement that one idea and they get a 30x return on what they actually paid you.
Yeah.
Right. So for them at that point, it's kind of like, okay, well, this guy's earned his worth and this has been a great relationship. So sometimes that happens. I had that happen to me. I gave the company one idea and I helped them implement it. And I mean, fortunately for them, they added, almost $4.5 million with that one idea. So, after that, they were like, Doug, we're good. And I'm like, well, our engagements still can continue. They're like, Doug, come on, look, we paid you this and you return that. So that happens. I also find, Wes, that sometimes people, just the fact that you're there.
Yeah.
Right. They know they got to be accountable to the issue. So, yeah, that's also value to them too, because they actually take action where they would not.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes it happens. I mean, I've had people pay me retainers and, I hear from them once a month and I'm like, you can certainly talk to me more than that, but they're like, I don't need it. So yeah, that's value. So sometimes, yeah, I feel like, okay, well, I could give more, but what I've learned is even if we give more, sometimes that's too much. Right. And they, and that's not value for them because now we become kind of something that they got to think about that they don't want to think about now.
Yeah. Kind of grinds them down and yeah. All right. I know I'm weird and crazy, but I'm just making sure I'm not weird and crazy on that one topic.
Well, if you are, I am. So, and everybody else I know that's having that problem is,
very cool.
If you're in the selling space or you're in the consulting space or coaching, well, everything is in the selling space, no matter what we deem it as. Bankers are selling loans, right? We have to be aware of and make the upfront agreement on clarity on what would be deemed successful for that other individual. Mm-hmm. And as long as we deliver that, that's usually good. The challenge sometimes is we as consultants, we want to do more, you know what I mean? And so sometimes we'll do what's called scope creep when the client does it, but it's called scope seep when we do it. So we'll just keep trying to do more and more and more. But what I have found is by doing that, when you have a clear agreement up front, if you try to do the seep part on our own end, it's actually not determined as value most of the time. So I would highly encourage people to get clear agreements and fulfill that agreement, then go on to the next one.
Yeah. Yep. Amen. Scope seat. That's a writer downer. I just put that here on the notes. Very cool, man. So tell us about your book.
I wrote a few books and I never published them.
What?
Yeah, I have, I think 2 or 3 others right now. But then I published this book called Win-Win Selling. It's Unlocking the Power of Profitability by Resolving Objections. So I wanted to write a book, and I write books on one specific subject, and I go through the philosophy and the practical aspects of how to communicate and resolve and objections in this one, because, objections are forming from early on age. I mean, people bring the objections up with them through their childhood. So I wanted to do something specific like that because it's a big pain point for people selling in general. And yeah, you can use formulas and tricks and things like that. But the reality is that when you can have a win-win resolution to their objection, and I outline it and detail it in the book, you can pretty much handle any objection that comes the way, because it's formulaic. But you don't have to rely on routine, parroting back, if they said this, you say that, type responses. So that's why the reason I wrote it, because I wanted to help some people who are selling. They're always afraid of the objection, right? Many of them, not all of them, but so it went to my surprise, it became a bestseller in 4 countries pretty quickly. And I wasn't going to release it, but a friend of mine actually asked me to read the manuscript. So I gave it to her, and she called me up and she started asking me questions. The first one was, Doug, did you really write this book to help people like you said? And I said, yes. And she said, well, hey, Doug, you asked me 2 more questions. Then the fourth one got me. She goes, Doug, I read the book. It's great. My curiosity, how are you going to help people unless you release the book? And that's what made me release the book, right? But what I realized is the level of question she was using was exactly what I had in the book. So she was using what I was doing, teaching.
So does the sale really begin when the prospect says no? Do we have to get 5 no's to get to yes?
No. No.
All right, that's one. Okay, give me another no.
The sale begins long before you even talk to someone, right? The sale begins from the moment you decide that you're going to promote something, because it's all about positioning prior to the sale. Are you positioned as an expert? Are you positioned as a commodity? How do you want to be positioned? And then aligned. So again, all the messaging has to be positioned and aligned correctly, with the fears and frustrations and things that your target buyers, are having, and everything that you do, your marketing, literature, anything, the prospecting methods you use, all of that, once that's aligned, you're building rapport long before you even talk with someone.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. So where do we send folks to get your book?
They can go to Amazon, pick it up on, Amazon. It's Win-Win Selling by Doug C. Brown. They can go to highvelocitytraining.com, and the book is offered there as well. Or, give me a shout on businesssuccessfactors.com, and I can get a book sent out to them.
Very cool. All right. So give us that one more time. And I'm linking to it as well. So it's in the show notes. When y'all are listening to this, you can scroll down to the bottom, linking to your sales revenue growth training and your sales revenue growth consulting companies. And then the book. So Win-Win Selling. Is there like a shortened URL we should send them, or?
No. Those are the ones that primarily, people go to highvelocitytraining.com or businesssuccessfactors.com, or they buy it off of Amazon, which is fine. And please, if you buy it and like it, leave a 5-star review. I would appreciate it.
You know what? Even if you don't like it, leave a 5-star review. 'Cause, man, we work hard to make these books, and then one guy gets, yeah, you know, I don't know, stick up his butt. It's like, come on, man, just stop hating, would you?
I had somebody give me a review once and they only gave me 4 stars, but the review was like, this is the best material I've ever read in my life. But you know what? I was like, so I called the lady up. Actually, I knew who she was. I called her up and I'm like, why'd you give me 4 stars? She goes, I never give anybody 5 stars.
Oh,
So
dang.
you know,
Well, have her edited at least, and to say that, you know,
but
so like a 4-star for me is like a 100-star from a mere human.
I figured it this way. It looks a little more believable when they're not all 5 stars, right? You know,
Yeah.
So, but it was funny.
Yeah, I was actually I was having a drink with a buddy of mine a couple weeks ago, and I mean, we're just over this COVID crap. I was never really into it, and then my whole family got COVID in June, so it's like we have antibodies, we have tiger blood, man, and this guy, it's a great bar, little place, and somebody just lit this guy up, the bartender, on Yelp. You know, it's like, well, screw that. I mean, I logged in right then and gave him a 5-star review. I'm like, look, man, I love this place. You know, if you're that worried about COVID, don't go out and have a drink. I mean, good grief. You're so worried. You know, you can sit next to me at the bar. I don't have a mask on because when you're eating and drinking, you don't have to wear it, but you're afraid of the bartender. Like, I digress, man. Win-win selling. That's how you do win-win selling, right? Give, baby. Give.
Well, that you brought up a good point, Wes. I mean, you know, the fact that you gave them a 5-star review, that is an entry level to have a conversation to lead to build a meaningful relationship. Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't think about that, but I mean, sometimes when you just go review a company and it's truthful that you find it's, you know, providing value, you could do that. And then, you know, actually give the owner a call or the CEO a call and say, hey, listen, I really think this about there. I just want you to know that I placed that review. Yeah. You know, may I tell you what I do?
Yeah. Well, and I get this all the time, like on LinkedIn, although it has it's weaned a little bit, waned, I don't know, reduced, where people, hey, can you give me a review, you know, here on LinkedIn? I'm like, dude, I don't really know you. Right.
Right.
But it's like, if they would give me a review, like out of the blue, I'm going to get notified, and I click on it. I'm like, who the hell, Doug? Like, I got like tens of thousands of connections on LinkedIn, right? But I'm going, Doug Brown. Oh yeah. Oh, what is that guy? Oh, you know what? I like this guy. Yeah, I remember him on the podcast. Yeah. All right, and I go give you a review.
Right.
You don't even have to ask, right? But people. It's like so foreign. People even think that, but they don't mind asking. I'm like, dude, come on, give first, right?
Always. I mean, this is a rapport building process, right? So you're constantly. I mean, you think about it, Wes. If you know, and if we were in the pursuit of, I don't know, a date, right, and we see this lovely person. You know, we walk up and we compliment them if we're smart, right? Genuinely, right? Truthfully compliment them. So we just don't go up and say, most of the time anyways, hey, you know, you want to go to dinner with me, right? So that's us asking for something. But if we give first and then we build a relationship, whether it be, you know, quick or over a period of time, usually the other person wants to reciprocate as long as they feel safe and they feel that it's genuine.
Yeah. So
yeah, getting a review first for somebody and then connecting with them. Absolutely. I can understand why you would do that. So, yep. So for all your listeners, start placing reviews on people you want to have connections with.
Yep. Amen. All right, Doug, all the way from New Hampshire, man. Thanks for coming on the Sales Podcast. It's been great.
I've really enjoyed myself. I love your personality. I do a bunch of these. I have to say this is in the top of the top in your interview style. So I really appreciate how you handle yourself and who you are as a person. And I was shocked to see how many children you have.
All mine. Same woman. Imagine how shocked I am every morning. I wake up, they're still here and they want to eat. They expect food. They expect clothing. They expect me to patch the hole in the roof. Damn.
Sometimes, just unreasonable request.
So demanding. Good grief. What was I thinking, man? Crazy time. Like, what else am I going to spend my money on, huh?
That's true, because you'll never get a bigger return than you do on your children.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny, right? So I collect these knives. I could show one, but then the listeners might freak out. Well, there's a big sword back there, but that's from the Air Force Academy. That's different.
That's right.
But like I've got a bunch of them, like dozens. And so Christmas is coming up, right? So one of my sons, he still lives in town, and we train jujitsu together. And I was like, all right, come over and pick a few. He's like, what? Like, you get a few. And I texted my son, he's coming down from San Francisco for Thanksgiving. I said, you get to pick some too. Like, what? So like, to start, giving them cool things. I mean, that's the coolest thing. Right? It's like, I really don't give a crap, dude. If I wasn't married, I'd probably be living in a hut somewhere in South America, Central America, with a nice suntan and just really not giving a crap.
Well, yeah. And I'd probably live in the hut next to you.
We'd be fishing a little. I don't know, maybe teach English as a second language to some people, because it's the only skill I'd really have down in Mexico or wherever. And like, okay, it's all good. So
you want to hear, in closing, you want to hear a quick little cute sword story?
Yeah. So
it's a military story. So I think you might be able to appreciate, as you were in the military. I was in the military. I was in the color guard in the military. Right. Yep. So I was the guy who carried, we had sabers on as well as carrying the colors of the flags for people who may not know. So we were doing something very important at a very important church. And so I'm in there, and this gentleman, Larry Bechtel, was on the other side, and he also had a sword. So we were bored, and, we were young, 21. So, and we were bored. So I went, I pulled the sword out of the scaff, and I go, Larry, on guard. Right. And I pulled the sword up and I put it up, how you would like salute with a sword. Right. And I go, Larry, on guard. And he goes, on guard. And he pulls the sword out very quickly.
Oh, no.
And it flies almost out of his hand, and it sticks right into the wall of this church. And I looked at Larry and I said, I don't think you're making it to heaven. So,
come on, man. God's pretty forgiving.
I would imagine God was probably laughing, but yeah. So I can say that the E8s were not very pleased, the sergeants.
Well, we would see people. So like at the Air Force Academy, we got this big parade field, right? Mm-hmm. And it can hold all 4,400 cadets, right? However many we've got, and so you got 40 squadrons. Each squadron's, 100, 110, depending on the year. And you got your squadron commander out front, right? And you got your group command. So you got so we got 4 groups, 10 squadrons, so you got the 10 squadron commanders. And inevitably, every time we had a parade, there'd be at least one you'd see with their sword. Well, so you'd have the squadron commander, you'd have three flight commanders as well. And one of them, and they'd have their swords out. They'd be hungover, and not necessarily hungover. I'd maybe 50-50, because just being out, if you're out there in the heat, right, and the wool jacket and stuff, and if you lock your knees, right, and you lock your knees and stare at one place, like you just basically hypnotize yourself and you pass out.
Right.
But being hungover and dehydrated at 5,000 plus feet, 7,000 plus feet, doesn't help either. But you'd see them, they start to wobble, man. That sword comes down and they plant it in the ground and they try to catch themselves and they just pirouette around that sword, boom, and then drop, and then you got to replace them. But there were always 1 or 2 ambulances in the back, because somebody would pass out regardless, even somebody just in the uh, configuration, and the assembly, and you lock your knees, and especially if you're in the back or like kind of in the middle, like the air's kind of stifled, and and it's tallest to shortest, right? So you're in the back and you're just staring at somebody's neck for like 45 minutes, just. But I digress.
No, that's a great business lesson. I mean, the business lesson I got out of that is, somebody's always going to fall down. So make sure you have a backup person, right?
Well, yeah, that's what the military does, right? I remember I was in Korea. I had to create our SOPs, our standard operating procedures. And the idea was, I'm dead, right? I'm the lieutenant running this place. So I made all these procedures for all this equipment we had to run. And I would always get the least experienced person, this 18-year-old, 19-year-old, brand new airman. I'm like, I'd give them the binder and I'd leave the room. I'm like, run this equipment. Tell me if my plan's any good, because who can I ask a question? No, I'm dead. We're in Korea, right? There's a 1 million man Red Army 60 miles from us. One of them just got me, and it's like, you're not in trouble, right? I'm in trouble. If you can't do this, I'm in trouble because I'm the one writing this plan. So that drove home. It's like, now I'm just a stickler on this stuff. I do a lot with CRMs, and it's because you'll see like these super smart, geeky guys, they just jump right to it. Like, whoa, back up. They don't think it means anything. No, go start. Where'd you go? Start. Oh, CRM. Oh, settings. Oh, sales pipelines. Oh, okay. You're 6 levels deep and you just jumped right to it. Like, I need a screenshot. I wrote a 700-page book on Infusionsoft, 1,100 images, because each one I'd put a box around it. Go here, box, here, box, like, because that matters.
Sure. And when you're doing software or architecting, anything like that, even sales,
it matters.
If you miss a critical piece in the process, it breaks down pretty quickly.
Yep. Amen. All right. It was 37 degrees this morning, so I skipped the gym and I waited because now it's 73 degrees. So I don't mind. I'll go work out when it's 110. I don't like working out when it's 37. I don't know. Does that make me weak? Am I weak?
No. That makes you intelligent.
All right. I mean it this time. I'm going, man. Thanks for coming on the show. We're linking to your book, Win-Win Selling, linking to your website. So, man, thanks for coming on the show. It's been great.
It's been an honor. Thank you, Wes.
Have a system, right? Chet Holmes was great with systems. Tony Robbins was great with systems. Doug became great because he applied those systems, and now he's applying his own. So you can't keep winging it. The problem with entrepreneurs and salespeople is that we get bored. We want to create our own chaos, and it's killing you. All right. It's keeping you from reaching your full potential. You don't always need drama. You don't always need fires to put out. Enjoy the success. Enjoy the downtime. Enjoy the boredom that being a master brings for you. But then when you're a true master, you'll learn how to take things to another level, how to invent something new, how to just reinvent the industry, add something that's never been done before. That's different than making new fires you have to put out. All right. So you need to figure out what is really important in your business, systematize it. Okay. You're going to talk about the ABCDE sales and marketing system: attract, bond, convert, deliver, endear. Talk about selling equals dating. My pipeline. What is the process for making eye contact, for approaching, asking them to dance, getting their number, inviting them out? It's the same thing for selling. I've got a sales calculator. It's free on the website that walks you through each of the phases of your business, makes you put down the profit, put down the percentage of each step in your outbound, in your outreach. You got to start somewhere. If you can measure it, you can improve it. We talked about, direct mail. We had Nick Runyon on for episode 471. Really cool company out of Montana. doing great stuff with direct mail, handwritten notes. Are you doing what doesn't scale? Not enough people are. I know, because I'm the recipient of pitches every day on LinkedIn, email, cheesy phone calls. Rarely do I get direct mail. I did. Craig Ballantyne, had him on the show because he's doing great stuff. It was cool seeing what he's doing, but it costs money to do direct mail. Okay, it costs money to do everything, but it's easier to hide some of it through, you're just paying a subscription on your email or whatever. So it's kind of a sunk cost. It's invisible. But what's the opportunity cost of not standing out? What's the opportunity cost of not being special, of doing the little things that don't scale? You need to figure that out, okay, and then start doing it. If you want to accelerate that, hit me up. I do private consulting for small to medium-sized businesses, do executive coaching, if you will, if it's just one-on-one. So hit me up, all right? Happy to help you. It's what I do, help you sell better. Thanks for listening. I'll go sell something.